Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio. Elevate your franchise with Franchise Now. We tell your brand story on our radio podcast and boost it with powerful content marketing strategies. From blogs and videos to infographics and more, we enhance your brand's SEO and online visibility. Let Franchise Now help your franchise stand out in a crowded market. Visit us today and learn more to start your journey for greater visibility and success. And now, here's your host.
Welcome back, everybody, to Franchise Marketing Radio, where we bring you the latest insights from business leaders and innovators in the franchise world. I'm your host, Rob Ganley, and I am thrilled. With us today, Lindsay Gainor. She's the Vice President of Human Resources and Talent Management at ServiceMaster. Lindsay brings a wealth of experience in HR strategy, talent management, and organizational development from her work with both public and private companies across various sectors. Today, we'll be diving into her unique approach to leadership, her vision for talent strategy and franchising, and the role HR plays in driving success across franchise networks. And we have more brands involved in this. So it's going to be interesting to dive in. Lindsay, welcome to the show. It's great having you.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So as I said there at the end, there's multiple brands involved here. Right? I'm always fascinated by the multi-platform companies. I just think it's like the next evolution of franchising, and it makes it even better. And I know there's sort of a cohesive idea behind it. And you've come in, and I want to hear. My first question is really about how did you wind up with ServiceMaster? You had an extensive background, and you obviously had a choice at one point. Tell me a little bit about how that all came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was contacted by someone who's representing ServiceMaster Brands about the opportunity. And at first, I wasn't quite sure. I hadn't heard of ServiceMaster Brands, but the more they told me a little bit about the story of the organizations that fall within ServiceMaster Brands, the more I tuned in and wanted to hear more. And so the more I learned, the more interested I became, and then ultimately met with the brand president of Two Men in a Truck, Randy Shaka, and some leadership members from the ServiceMaster team. And I just knew walking away from those conversations that it was such a great fit. They struck me as people who were salt of the earth, just really good people, doing the right thing, and really, really cared about the people at the core of the business. And just, I knew in my heart that they were going to be great partners on this journey. And so I was hooked. I was hooked.
I love that. I mean, I feel that way about franchising. There's a heart in small business, I think, that emanates just naturally. Not that everybody's perfect in any industry, but I feel like what you described, I see more times than not with leadership in brands, because it really comes from a place of service, and it comes from a place of caring about like everything, right? You care about the end user or the customer, care about the franchisee, their employees, the families. It is a network that's sort of all kind of connected, but individual. So it's important, and I think you need a heart. So it doesn't surprise me that was your first impression or early impressions, right? Because that's kind of why I'm in franchising. But tell me, I mean, coming from your background, you did have some different experiences with HR, and franchising is a different model, right? So tell me a little bit about how you started to adapt a little to accommodate in what you're being asked to do. When we're talking about franchise brands and networks, which are independent owners, it's a little different framework there to deal with. So tell me a little bit about how you're approaching that.
Absolutely. So when I think about our franchisees as, our stakeholders, if you will, right? When it comes to people, the best thing that I can do in my position to enable their success is to ensure that we have the most talented, qualified people on our corporate teams that support them. So when I think about Two Men in a Truck or Two Men in a Junk Truck or Merry Maids, which are the three brands that I primarily support in ServiceMaster, we have a Michigan support center headquartered in Lansing, Michigan, and it's filled with super talented folks who support those franchisees day in and day out, from everything from sales support to marketing, training and development, all types of very, very talented folks. And so I look at it as this is my job to ensure that we keep those folks happy, engaged, and thriving so that they can help support our franchisees and ensure that they are happy and growing and thriving, right? So it's a little bit of a flywheel effect if you think about it in that way. So I think about that as the primary driver in my role, if you will, as it relates to franchisees.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so like with the franchise model, talent acquisition has to shift. I mean, there's a sort of a multi-tiered thought process. And I love that you just answered it. Because I think that's important. I think franchisors have to have the best of the best. Sometimes it comes from different places where you pull that, but you do, because why? You want to take care of your franchise network, your franchisees. And that makes perfect sense. You certainly would, if anyone listening would be like, well, they're not doing a very good job hiring people. I don't know if I want to buy a franchise, right? So it's very critical, like it's beyond critical. And I think sometimes I don't hear it talked about as much. Like, how are we taking care of our team? How are we giving them the path they need to provide, that high level of service that you need to do? So very cool. So, but is there a certain strategy or approach that you've been using? I mean, how do you assess whether or not teams are getting what they need, whether or not roles are built in a way that is a cohesive team? If I think of football, right? It's like, we already know what a good football, like we already have the roles. We don't have, so we know, and then we know what a good quarterback is, we know that. We know the team. But sometimes when you come into a brand, you almost have to rethink the team, and you might, to get to where you're going. So how did you approach that when you first got there? And is there any tips or any ideas that you just have to be there in order to provide that level where people say, I love working here? Like, they're just so proud to be like, that's kind of, I'm sure, where you want to get people to. Like that would be the goal. I'm sure it's not always that way. But anyway, tell me how that works. Like, how do you get people to that level in their role? Do they really care about the brand?
Yeah, I would say for our teams, how we function and where we are today. I mean, I really can't take credit of the culture that's currently built at the Michigan Support Center. I mean, it is there, it's thriving. And so I kind of look at it again as my role is to protect that and grow and build on that. And I think to answer your question, what has made that so successful and why do people love showing up every day there? What I see is that culture. And I know that that's kind of a buzzword. And so it's really hard to kind of wrap your arms around, like, well, what is culture and how do you build it? And in my opinion, it's something that you have to show up and build every single day. You can't let your foot off the gas when it comes to culture, whether that's within our Michigan Support Center or, the way that we kind of consult with our franchisees and how they build their culture. It's something you've got to build every day, day in and day out. It means making people feel valued and heard. And so how frequently are we connecting with people? Every month we do a coffee talk at the Michigan Support Center with all employees. We gather feedback, we do recognition, we provide regular business updates so that no one is ever left in the dark and no one ever feels like they don't have a voice, right? We're all in this together. I think the other thing is our leadership is incredibly approachable. We are not a hierarchical organization where people feel like they can't raise issues or go and speak with someone regardless of their title. That just is not how we operate. And so employees really do have this level playing field, if you will, when it comes to speaking up about issues or even prompting ideas. I'm a firm believer in, innovation and problem solving. Often, the people with the best ideas are the ones closest to the problem. And so I think that that's critical if you're trying to build a super engaged culture, is making sure that you're seeking out those ideas and that input from the very front line. And then it's also having fun and connecting people, right? I mean, beyond the day to day, it's making sure that we have opportunities to connect as a team. And I would also say the thing that we do really well is connecting with community. So whether that's, raising funds or donations for a local charity or a cause, it's something that people can always feel really good about, and we can make an impact in the community. And then the last thing I'll say that I think is an important pillar of our culture is making sure that we're all heading towards the same goal, right? So I think it can be hard to engage people when there's a lack of clarity. So when people don't know what's expected of them or how they contribute to the overall success, it's really hard for them to stay engaged or stay excited. So I would say we do an excellent job of making sure that we're all kind of pushing for the same goals to support our franchisees and our continued growth.
So I've heard from a lot of people in your position or different positions, like leadership positions, that when you say clarity, and I'm so like big on that, like it's so hard, right? Like I work on it every day. Like I gotta get clear in my life. Um, Clarity, when I hear some brands, they really have it down to like, one thing we talk about, and if it doesn't, they filter, right? But it's so elegant, and it only adds, it only lifts. So it's like, how did you do that? Get it to something so simple. But tell me a little bit about that clarity. How do you describe that? Is it very clear to people what everybody's sort of overarching drive is? Is that the culture? And you want to share a little bit about that, and then, well, go ahead. I'll let you tackle that, and then I had a follow up to that. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I would say we operate more under the framework of cascaded goals. So goals that are set, at the top of the organization, how those cascade down to departments and then ultimately to individuals. People feel a sense of pride and connectedness to what they do every day and how that serves the bigger team and the organization. And it also helps us to bring clarity and direction, right? In that way. So I would say we're more of that, we don't have one thing, of course, we have a lot of things that we're focused on. But I would say it's more of that cascaded goals approach.
No, that's I think everybody has that. Yeah. It's some of the taglines and sometimes it is somewhat clear when you think about what you're trying to do for the customer or what have you. And if you're doing that right, it affects everything else kind of. That's kind of what I meant. But no, I think that's brilliant what you're saying about engagement and caring. I know for me throughout my career, I mean, when you're working for yourself, it's a little easier. And I think that's why people have that desire, right? And we're in the franchise world and we help people do that. But I mean, it really is about what you just said. It's a lot of people are just as happy to be connected. And me too. Like I'm good. I've taken some chances in my life, but I'm also happy to be around guys like that are leading your organizations. Some guys are wired to be leaders, but if you can feel like you're making an impact to that, it's such an uplifting, valuable thing. And I think most people want that. And if you get that right, you do a good job. So people first, is that something you talk about? Is that something that literally you say? Is that a phrase that's in your culture where you kind of say that to people? Like we're about people first?
Yeah, I would definitely say we are very people first centric in our organization. You and I were chatting before we started the recording about, some of the recent weather events, right? Our very first inclination is to check on our franchisees and their staff. And, is there anything we can do to support, right? It's, that's always where we're going to go first, right? Is where are the people who are involved? What can we do to help support in that way? So it is definitely a very people first focus, throughout the organization.
I feel like if you say that, you immediately reframe things, right? I know it seems sort of like standard, like I've heard that before, like, but no, I think if people are now thinking it, and that could be down at any level of the organization, right? You're just feeling like I care about my, coworker, people first, like it's just in your mind. I think it's important to have, take a stand on those types of ideas just to keep it clear, right? Because sometimes we do have a lot of other goals, and sometimes it conflicts with the basics sometimes. And so I think it's important that you guys think that way. It's a big, big factor. How do you, when it comes to franchisees, and I know you support the corporate, franchisor and a lot of the talent that comes in there and supports the networks. How does your role also impact the franchisees, or is that a different role, or is that your team? But how do you support the individual franchisees and how that relates to their talent and all that?
Yeah, we have a team within the Michigan Support Center who supports the general consulting, the business consulting for franchisees. And one of the things that they are responsible for is, consulting with our franchisees on general recruiting and retention kind of processes. And so although they're not a part of HR, they're a part of the consulting team, we work closely, we share ideas and kind of connect on what they're consulting to. They, I would say, take a very data-driven approach, right? They are keen on staying on top of market trends, what's happening in that space, And not just broadly, right? Like I think sometimes when you read the headlines about HR or talent acquisition or what's happening, it can really get murky depending on what industry you're in, right? So we are pretty keen on making sure that we get all the way down to the industry that we fit within, and then use that guidance to help coach and mentor and consult with our franchisees as it relates to that. So one of their big things that they do is the career move season. And what that really entails is supporting our network with materials, whether that is, commercials, advertisements, strategies, and everything that can kind of surround that around ramping up for the busy season. So for 2 minute trucks, if you think about when people move, it's summertime, right? So this career move season really wraps around that to help our franchisees get up and staffed for their busy move season.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into the teamwork part for some of your brands, I feel like. And all models. Yeah, yeah. And I will say, I'm going to say it. I have had experience with your brand recently, or 2 Men in a Truck, and I'm going to say it was a great experience. Otherwise, I wouldn't try to say anything, but it was well executed. I was followed up with a lot. Everything was confirmed. I mean, it was just great communication, and I just totally had utmost confidence that we're getting the job ever behind. I always knew where we were in the process. It's basic stuff, but it's everything. You would think, right? But it's not easy to do unless you have the right processes and training and hire the right way. And so, obviously, you guys are doing good there. So at least for me, I'll speak for me. But anyways, so I wanted to ask you also. I get involved a lot in technology. AI has been a big part of my life, even before ChatGPT, a little bit before, a few years before. But it is life changing for all of us. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. Like, how do you, obviously it's probably being used in different ways. You may use it just in your personal or to help you day to day, but how do you look at it in a bigger picture way? And how do you see it helping you in things like talent acquisition or training or development? Like what are your thoughts there with technology? It could be technology in general or more specifically AI.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think HR and technology, it's always an interesting space, right? And there's a lot of people who are always trying something new. And that's how we get to, innovation and new things, right? So I would say as far as technology goes, my personal opinion is it's got to be user friendly, right? It's because I think it's really easy for early tech adopters. I would consider myself that person too, to get really excited about technology. But I think at the end of the day, if there's not that return for the end user, if it's not making their life easier, if it's another system for them to log into, like if there are, downfalls there, we can be like shooting ourselves in the foot, right? So I think that's what I try to lead with when I think about technology. There's absolutely technology out there that does make things easier, especially in the HR space. And I think, we're in some of those discussions right now about where do we want to invest for next year and what does that look like for us. But I would also think for a small business, don't feel like you're disadvantaged if you don't have a big investment budget for things like technology. There's a lot that you can do without having to overinvest in something. But with that being said, there are some really interesting technologies out there that can integrate seamlessly with systems that your users are already in and day out. So that would be a great thing to kind of look for if you're looking to invest, to say, does this fit into, my Microsoft Office or Google Suite, something I'm already using that my staff is used to?
Very good answer. And I could tell you, as a guy that, gets involved in deploying or supporting or selling or delivering or any of that type of stuff, it is. The last thing you want is more complexity, or engagement is always a challenge for all of us to try to get used to tools and learn new things. So it really just has to uplift what you're doing your day to day. And if it does that, then you're motivated to use it. Kind of like the iPhone, it just worked good and it made my life easier, right? Or a smartphone. We don't have to just say it's about that, but it's any kind of, So yeah, that's a beautiful answer. And so, I guess we'll have to see with HR. My feeling about AI is it's AI to the human power. In other words, I think it just makes humanity stronger and better. We will redeploy, we will change how we do things, but what an amazing opportunity. I think actually it may free up us to be more relational, more people focused, more people centered. I do think it will change what we do every day, but it'll lead there. And I think as long as our leaders all believe that, and again, it's isn't about when I kind of laugh, I'm like, can you imagine any company saying, yeah, we're going to quadruple our revenue and fire half the people? Like, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we all have to realize there's a shift, but it's to enable everybody getting better. And I think we'll have more time to do the things that matter. And I was saying, a lot of brands that I interact with, it is about that customer experience because it will matter so much more. My interactions with other people, right? I mean, when it just can be done for me and there's no interaction or whatever it might be in automation that we might see in the future, I think it would just free us up to do more that we didn't think of doing. So cool.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And for me personally on the AI front, I love using it when I have writer's block. So if I'm doing something creative, or if I'm writing a document, or something and I'm having a hard time getting started, or I'm kind of struggling, I will feed it some inputs to try to get me started on that. To your point, it just shortens the amount of time it takes me to do that task, which frees me up to do the other relational things. So I agree.
Yeah. And the creativity that it will bring to it, I just think is amazing. Wait do you say? It's going to be quite interesting that we get to live through this lifetime. You know what I mean? So, all right. So let's get back to a little HR. I wanted to ask a question about so DEI, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. I know a lot of people talk about it. It seems to be somewhat of a little bit of a controversial thing. I'm just wondering, how do you manage that? I know as an HR professional, obviously it's something to consider and understand and implement. How do you approach it? And what have you done? And what are you bringing to this brand on that front?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. So I think for me, DE&I, if I was speaking to a business leader, I would say it's table stakes. Set aside that it's the right thing to do and it's a need, set that aside, yes. And then furthermore, I would say it's engaging and retaining employees, but it's also something your customers are looking for too, right? So I look at it as this is more than just for our employees. I'll go there first, but for employees, it creates a greater sense of belonging and inclusion, which leads to greater innovation. And if you look at just some of the numbers and the studies and the science behind it in organizations that do it and do it well, they're outperforming their competitors, right? And in almost every space in terms of profitability, engagement, right? So there's a real business case. Again, just set aside that it's the right thing to do. There's a real business case for the business and for employees, but then furthermore, connecting with your customers, I think about it as our customer base, regardless of the industry, is very complex and dynamic. And the more you can connect with that customer base, by mirroring that internally, is going to increase your success, right? I think the other thing with diversity, equity, inclusion, like you said, it can feel like a very polarizing topic. And I would challenge leaders. I like the word demystify, demystify that for your people, right? Because it doesn't have to be, because at the end of the day, we all have something in our personal lives that makes us different from another person in the room. And, you and I could be the same gender, same race, same religion, and, same everything on paper, same college, same whatever, and get into a room and we would still have differences in the way that we grew up or the perceptions that we had. So there's something unique to all of us. So DE&I does not just apply to one group or another. It's so multifaceted. And so I would say demystify that, unpack that a little bit, and figure out how you can bring that into your organization without it being so polarizing, because it doesn't have to be. We all have something, right? And we all want to be valued and seen and included. So I think you're right. It's there. It feels polarizing to a lot of folks, but it doesn't have to be.
Thank you for that. It was a great answer, and I have never heard a really good answer because I've never asked someone who would know. Like you're an expert in this field, and that is brilliant. I mean, I think that you're right. First of all, America is multicultural. Like we are that. We have become that in spades now. And so, but it's so interesting and fascinating, and I think it opens up the door to people feeling like they can be more uniquely them and fit into a team situation and make an impact versus trying to compete on these more general ideas that really aren't them. And then may cause stress and kind of puts people at odds sometimes, I think. So I think that is so much deeper and so much more meaningful than anything to do with, the media might bring up, or I hear snippets from things, and I'm just like, no, there's got to be more to it than all this. I mean, come on. But no, that was brilliant. And the fact that there's an impact, you're starting to see studies that show that, cultures like this really do perform well. And then also just the reflection. You're right. I mean, your customers are everything, everybody, right? Like any kind of background, race, creed, culture, whatever, so you're serving them all. So that's great. I appreciate that. Okay. So vision for the future. I know you've been with this brand for under a year, I believe. And so tell me a little bit about how that looks for you. What is your vision? What do you hope to see happen for the ServiceMaster umbrella of brands? Like, is there one or two key things that you really are moving towards?
Yeah, I get really excited when I think about the future of ServiceMaster Brands because I mean, as you mentioned, I'm fairly new in my role. I'm well under a year, but I also see that there's so much opportunity within ServiceMaster Brands as this group of organizations that have come together. And I think we've just somewhat scratched the surface in terms of opportunities for our franchisees and also opportunities for our ServiceMaster employees. So like when you think about even just the business to consumer sector, right? Moving and cleaning between Two Men and a Truck and Merry Maids, there's a lot of opportunity for our franchisees and for our networks to come together and be stronger together and to really service a customer end to end on a number of different needs, right? And again, I think it gets to the heart of service and caring for people. What we do is so deeply personal. We are in people's homes. We are moving or cleaning or taking care of some of the things that matter most to them. Their their personal effects, right? It's very personal. So I think there's a lot of opportunity within the ServiceMaster organization for our business units or companies to continue to work together and become stronger together, which in turn creates a lot of opportunity for our corporate staff, right? And how we support those franchisees.
So like you said, you deal with people's personal stuff and how that can be in serving people. It really hit me because, so my experience recently, I told you about, there was a piece of glass. So I have a coffee table that I just love, and it's older, but the glass on top, there's a little corner. It's broken, but it fits in. So there's a little back there, but it fits. There's a little piece. So your team, they made sure I didn't lose that little piece, because if I lost a little piece, then it would have been too dangerous to keep it. I would have to go get a new piece. I don't know why I'm lazy to not. It's ridiculous, right? But it's just that they cared enough, even though it was kind of a dumb thing that I haven't fixed yet, a new piece of glass. But they took care of that, and I just felt like that, even though that was trivial, it was that they cared enough to make sure that they cared what I cared about, right? And it just came out the way they interacted. So I appreciate that, and just wanted to point that out. But I also know what you mean by being able to work together. So if you have multiple brands, it's really being able to help families more holistically, right? If you have another brand that does an extension, maybe like your ServiceMaster can get you out of that, restore everything, but maybe you now need to clean things up, or right, whatever it might be, or maybe you have to move stuff to get stuff out of the way to replace things or whatever. And so it's like all a team working together. And I think the more you can say yes, probably the better it must feel for the franchisees, right? So
yes. And we're so, like you said, even going back to what we said earlier about being people focused, our teams care so much about the people that we take care of every day. The opportunity to make that easier for them, if we are, say Merry Maids is the home cleaning service of a customer, and they say we're moving, and so are you in the new location that we're moving to? And we say, hey, by the way, we have a trusted sister brand that could help you with moving if you need that, right? It also gives that customer a sense of comfort, knowing that the same quality of service that they've just had and the care that they've received, that they can also get that in another facet of their life and can make it easy on them. Because at the end of the day, we're all so busy. Our lives are so busy. So anything we can do to make our customers' lives easier is kind of a win-win. So
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. And we're all making good money doing it, but hey, we're going to serve so that we can keep serving, right? I mean, that's what I think about business. I think it's an engine to serve each other, and we got to do well at our business so we can keep serving and serve more people. So it's important to have a great business model and to be super efficient, but it really comes down to that. What we're talking about today is people and service and making an impact. So I think that's awesome. So all right, so I'm going to ask you a question about buying or investing in a franchise brand, right? If coming from your background, you're an expert in HR, what would you look for in a brand, in a culture? Is there something, advice you might give? Obviously, you got the boxes checked for your brands, but what would be some of those important things to kind of look for that you might be able to see based on what you can see on the outside, what a culture or how they approach how they approach people, if you will?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've never been asked that before. I would
Just
go
thought of it, so I did not plan it. I'm not trying to stump you. Whatever comes up.
You get a gold star for the day, Rob. No, I would go back to what I said about culture. Look for those pillars. I won't rehit those, but I would say check first for that culture, right? If you pass the culture, right, then obviously you're looking for the growth and their track record for growth. But I would even say when you're looking at growth, look at what they're doing when the industry is down. Are they outpacing competitors? Are they taking market share? What are they doing not only in the good times, but maybe when the good times aren't so great? Because I think that's a true test of a brand, just much like it's a true test of a character. Because anybody can tell you how great they're doing when the market is great for whatever they're selling. But I would say go back and look at when maybe the market isn't so great, and how is that company persevering through that?
All right. Yeah. No, I mean, that I love that because problems, you said earlier, innovation and problem solving, and you were explaining something. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like if you commit yourself to those two ideas and getting better at them, I don't think there's anything you can't do in life. It'll be an interesting journey. You might have ups and downs, but it is just about learning to problem solve and how you deal with solving problems. And when they come, and I think the better you get at that, the easier it becomes almost a non-issue. Almost doesn't look like problems. Some people don't look like they're even dealing with problems. Like, it used to drive me crazy. We were talking about Michigan. I mean, Tom Brady, I'm thinking, this guy never had problems. He just got up and won games. I don't know, how does he do that, right? He's really good at problem solving and innovation. Yeah. But yeah, that is so key. Thank you for sharing. And thank you in general for spending time with me today and sharing your insights on franchising, but the HR angle, which I don't get a chance to talk to a lot of people on. So it's been awesome. I think it's so critical to what makes brands great, if not, the heartbeat of it. So thank you for being there. And is there anything you want to share with the audience in terms of how they might reach out to you if they are more interested in any areas of your brands, or maybe an opportunity to become a franchisee? What would be the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say anybody can reach me at LinkedIn /Lindsay Gainor. Or you can reach me via email, lindsay.gainor@servicemaster.com. And we have a phenomenal team, again, talking about those folks at our Michigan Support Center who are dedicated to, new or expanding franchisees with the 2-minute truck, 2-minute junk truck, and Merry Maids. And if it's beyond that, I'm happy to connect folks with the ServiceMaster team in Atlanta as well.
Oh, well, thank you very much for sharing all that. I appreciate it. Again, it was great having you on the show today. I hope to have you back again as things evolve. I know there's going to be a lot more change coming our way, and I think it will affect HR. So it'd be very cool to hear your take as things evolve in our world. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today, Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You got it. Thank you.